Solo mining is the embodiment of the original dream, a defiant act of individual sovereignty where one person, one node, and one miner take a stand against centralized control. We don't just mine for profit, we mine for principle. We mine for ourselves and for each other and for the unyielding spirit at Bitcoin's core. Join us as we dig in and hold the line. This is the Home Mining Podcast. Hello, Bitcoin home miners. Two Sats here, and I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors before we jump into another amazing episode here on the Home Mining Podcast. First up, if you want to stack sats the right way in the US or Canada, you've got to check out today's sponsor, Bitcoin Well. It's a fully non-custodial platform. It's straight to your own wallet using on-chain or Lightning. They never custody your funds. That's the way it should be. So use our link to join Bitcoin Well. You'll also earn bonus points with every Bitcoin buy you make when you sign up using our link. And those points are actually redeemable for coin tosses into their Bitcoin wishing well, which gets you free sats. You can even win up to 1 million sats in the wishing well, which is amazing. Or you can save up your points and use them for a Bidax Gamma from Solo Satoshi. So just go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen or hit the link in the description and join me on Bitcoin Well to start stacking sats today. Now, during this episode, have your Lightning wallets ready because we'll also be giving away some free sats, courtesy of Bitcoin Well. And if you're ready to go ahead and start your Bitcoin home mining journey with us, go ahead and grab a Bidax Gamma or a NerdQX++ from the Solo Satoshi store using our link or by scanning the QR code you see on the screen now. Listeners of the Home Mining Podcast that use this link have access to an exclusive discount code. All you got to do is go to the store using our link, put whatever you want in your cart, and when you go to checkout, use code 2SATS, the number 2, SATS, and you can snag yourself a nice little discount on your purchase. We really appreciate you supporting the podcast. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, and let's dig in to this next episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Home Mining Podcast by Solo Satoshi. I'm your host, 2Sats, and today I'm joined by Gabe from HashWatcher. He's the developer and the brilliant mind behind the app that is taking the home mining world by storm. We've got the exclusive for you. It's his first podcast. He's going to break down the dirty details that you might be wondering in terms of app permissions, data collection, and all the other amazing features that are part of the HashWatcher app. So Gabe, pleasure to have you today. Welcome to the Home Mining Podcast.
Hey, thanks, 2Sats. Thanks for having me. Like we talked about earlier, first podcast, super excited about it. What a great way to start off with it, being on this one for the first one.
Well, we're honored to have you, man. In the support queue, we're getting lots of people coming through asking questions about HashWatcher. And so I figured, you know what, it's time to get you on, get ahead of it, and learn as much as we can and really provide an educational resource for people because obviously people are loving the app. It's an app. Absolutely gorgeous UI, UX, great user experience, very, very engaging to look at, a lot better than just looking at the XOS on your browser. And so I think a lot of people are going to be adopting this going forward.
That's great. I think my journey first started with Bitcoin in general. Unfortunately, I missed out on it in the under $100 days. I was in high school back then, spending money on silly things. And I think I got into it about 2015, and that was when we had a pretty big run up. And, just like the memes say, I would wake up every hour or so, open the phone, check the Coinbase price or, whatever broker there was back then. And that really just took away a lot of sleep. And eventually, recurrent investments with them, never even really heard of mining, didn't have any part of that. Then graduated high school. I have an electrical and programming background. Always had been tinkering around with ESP32s, programming things, developed a couple pieces of software for a couple companies, local here in Michigan where I am, and then I think my first crypto miner I bought was the S19. And I want to say that was back in August, of this, previous year of 2025. And just like any sort of mining device, you start with one and then that itch starts to grow and grow and you just end up buying more. And these had brains on them It's that custom firmware that's a fork of the original. And then after I got my second one, I'm checking these IP based home screen shortcuts multiple times a day. And I think that was the beginning of HashWatcher when I quickly got annoyed with opening and closing multiple tabs, trying to remember the IP address. And so Brains was actually the very first type of miner supported by HashWatcher. And then, shortly after that, there was a solo block that was mined by BitX. And I think that took the world by surprise. That was the second one in that recent time frame. And, all eyes were on BitAxes and solo Satoshi. And so I bought one, and same thing, one turns into two or three. And then I ported over the capability for that to come to the BitX ecosystem. And then people were begging for Canaan support. And so it developed into an app that supported three different manufacturers with different hardware variations between them. So that was pretty interesting. The day one supporters of HashWatcher really, I think, started to make it blossom. There were a couple people that was just always in communication with me, and you know who you are, helping with bug fixes, seeing things that I could have not seen from my end because I'm a single user, and it's really blossomed into like what we see now. It's humbling to see screenshots of HashWatcher all over Reddit and Facebook. And as you guys see now, like people are talking about it in your support requests. So I think it's really becoming a big part of solo mining and just mining in general.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that the community was itching for something like this. Thankfully, it's packaged in such a nice, attractive, appealing way because I think that that really helps with the initial impression, and then that's when you start to like dig into it and you'll discover the functionality and the usefulness of it. But like XOS is not necessarily intuitive, and it's definitely not beautiful. When you look at something like HashWatcher, it really is. And so I think that they'll complement each other nicely, and it's great that you can add all of these other devices in there. I'm curious, just based on what you mentioned, you went with Brains. Is there support for LuxOS? Is there going to be any support for that firmware or no?
That's a pretty big category of questions I get in my email. So Brains is initially supported because they had a very easy to use and read API. Their customer supports pretty well too. As far as I know, Lux is not open source. So getting access to their API and the telemetry from the device isn't that available. Now, if there's another firmware that is open source that has that information published, then that can definitely be achieved. There's some older S9 units that use an older version of Brains. And that's really what I'm trying to push forward to get capability and support of that because there's a lot of S9 users. And
Yes.
although they run Brains firmware, it's a totally different, software. It's much earlier than the basic software that's on the S19s.
Absolutely. Yeah, I imagine over time, hopefully more of these mining conglomerates will start to realize open source is very critical and important. Right now, a lot of them like to keep everything close to their chest, obviously, but I think hopefully over time, over the next 5 to 10 years, people start to value open source even from their perspective about thinking more about the end user, and saying, hey, okay, you know what? If we let other people develop and iterate on this, ultimately it's just going to come back and benefit us as a company. So hopefully that's the direction it's going. But I'm glad that at least Brains, has that open availability.
Right. And I think what you said is a great example too when you look at Canaan. I think they've kind of really given support or the future development to the community. I mean, you look at their basic web app or the app on your phone for all those devices, and they're really bare bones. They've open sourced the nano firmware. And part of that open source also open sources the web UI, the graphics on that little round display. So I think by doing that, they can focus on hardware and kind of let the community grow and evolve the firmware itself and the features and all that.
Yeah, that'll be great because the family app is not the most beautiful thing and not the most functional thing. I definitely would much rather look at HashWatcher and monitor my Nano than the family app.
I agree. And I think one of the coolest things with the Canaan support that we brought was the ability to control the fan speed. In the early days, of the nanos, some of the plugs would overheat. And basically, once again, the app support just, there wasn't much to do there. No fan speed controls. It was very basic. But with HashWatcher, you can actually control the fan speed. You can always revert back to auto or change your speed all the way up to 100%. And it's crazy. I did an experiment with a thermal camera. I had the fan running at its auto speed, and I believe with the conditions it was like 32% fan speed. And the connector in the rear was 30 degrees Celsius, which is, oh, don't quote me on this. Someone's going to fact check me later. I think it's like 87 degrees Fahrenheit. And then running HashWatcher with the fan speed set to 100% cooled it down to 23 degrees Celsius, which was almost 20 degrees in reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if that even was an issue moving forward with those connectors overheating, just running your devices cooler will really make it run more efficient, and it pumps out more heat too when you actually have a fan moving, and those devices are really meant for heating, so to speak. So it's enjoyable when you can have more heat coming off if that's what it's for, while keeping your chips cool.
Yeah, I mean, longevity is the name of the game. In a lot of ways, it's very important. People really love to overclock things if they can, and you see that causes a lot of problems. And I think it's really important to be able to access those individual controls on these devices, right? And you couldn't previously do that with the Canon devices, right? Not like you can with what you built out. And so even if you can keep your chips a little bit cooler, anywhere from a little bit to significantly cooler, what is that going to do for the longevity of your device? It's going to improve it. It's going to increase it, and that's a huge win, right? You're going to feel like your money is better spent, better invested because this thing isn't going down. It's not combusting possibly. I know the original ones had some issues with that, right? So it's I think the newer ones are a lot more secure, a lot more robust. But yeah, cooling those chips down and the fan speed, because as you mentioned, the primary use of those is for heating, small area heaters, and yeah, being able to move that air, circulate that air with those fans at a higher speed is going to give you a better effect.
Yeah, and it was really alarming too to see the temperatures that they were setting these chips at. Coming from Brains and BitX, 60 degrees Celsius is, the not even close to the upper limit, but that's like the auto set point for, I think, the base firmware. It'll adjust the fan speed and maintain about 60. With Brains and S19, that's a little hotter or warmer, excuse me. But with the Canons and the Avalon, the default fan speed was setting those chips to about 85 to 90 degrees Celsius, which was just really alarming. But I mean, we have to give credit to them. They've done their testing. There's obviously some longevity at those temperatures. And we have to remember too, they're marketing these as a heater and not a stereotypical loud Bitcoin miner with very loud fans. So I think to make a successful product that they brought to the market that they could call a home miner, they really had to have these fans be quiet, put out some noticeable heat, and maybe at the sacrifice of the chip longevity. But, now with a tool that lets you change your fan speed, you can be in control of that. You can choose silentness, or you can choose quieter chips and more heat output. It's really interesting too, seeing all the temperature sensors inside the Canons. You have the Avalon Q, which has inlet and outlet temperatures, um, or the Nano 3S just has an exhaust temperature and then the chip temps. But it's pretty cool. I keep my Q in my garage to act as a heater in the winter. It defrosts my vehicle, and I can just pop open the app and look at the inlet temperature, and then I can kind of vary my guess in terms of like what my garage temperature is, because the inlet sensor is still getting warmed a little bit by the device, so it's not the true ambient temperature. But all the data that's there that Canon was hiding from us this whole time is presentable to you. And I mean, if you're a numbers person, which you probably are, and a geek in some way, like being into Bitcoin and solo mining, like the app is the bee's knees, I promise.
Yeah, that's the name of the game, is like customization, optionality, and data. People in the pleb mining, home mining community, that's what we eat up, right? That's what we absolutely love. And
Yep.
it just kind of goes against your nature and your instinct, if you're into this, to have closed source firmware and not be able to really access all of that stuff. So To have that all unlocked on the Canaan devices is a massive win, and very exciting for sure. I actually am waiting on my queue, and I've got a S here that I'm going to do an unboxing video on shortly. And I know that the guys at the space are building out Home Assistant for those as well. So
That's
just
gonna be
so
amazing.
many beautiful like collaborations and like great ideas that are being bounced back and forth. Again, the power of free open source software and yeah, combining things like HashWatcher with Home Assistant and that automation, and I think it's just going to be just a lot of fun, if nothing else.
Absolutely, yep. I think the future is really changing too for home mining and mining in general. As electricity costs keep increasing, people are going to find a way to use the waste heat more efficiently, and just overall the power consumption more efficiently in terms of designing new chips and just the hardware that houses those chips.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the sort of the more gritty details about the app itself. So I've just set it up recently here, and when you go to set this up, it's kind of giving you a little bit of a rundown, what the important requirements are, the hardware that's required, the network access, the the fact that there's no unneeded access. So I'd love if you could break down as the developer of this what all is needed in terms of permissions, what is it tracking and tracing and monitoring, what is it not doing that you think is important not to be doing, and just sort of just give us the big list and break it all down in terms of those questions there.
Yeah, so when you first download the app, one of the most important things that people have asked for are notifications for things like block findings, best difficulties. So from the beginning, your device is going to ask you if it can send you notifications. And those notifications are for things like your device is overheating, if you have a temperature alert set, if your device has achieved a new best difficulty, or if, we all hope for this, if it finds a block, your device will tell you that. And a little Easter egg, if you've got a Nano 3S, and you find a block, the Nano will celebrate with you. Um, so aside from the notification permissions, um, it asks for network permissions as well, local network permissions only, because the app is connecting to devices that are on your local network. All of your bitaxes or canons or your brains, those live on your local network. And so for your phone to communicate with those, it asks you for that. And that's so that when you type in your address, it can actually find that, because it's not making an outside connection to find that bitax that lives on your local network. And if you use the auto scan function where it will scan your network, it's just going through the IPs and looking for the port that the bitaxes use, the XOS ports. That way, if you have a lot, you're not typing them all in. You're just clicking add, add, add. And then any other sort of information that the app uses. So people have asked for the ability to let you change the pools from the app. And I'm kind of undecided on how to proceed with that, because the main thing I was happy to say and what made a lot of people happy is, no pool details are ever changed, because people don't want that, or things like that, manipulated or changed. And to do that feature would make the device have to send those detail requests or changes, to switch pools. So that's why it's kind of a hands-off approach with pool data. The
Where
only
would
pool,
that pool data be have to be sent to?
so it would be transferring on your local network. It never leaves. So that's just the app sending a pool URL and your username back to the app. So if HashWatcher never even has to touch your URL, your pool URL, and your username, then it's a pretty hands-off thing for HashWatcher. All of those controls lie with the user. The only pool related thing it can change is with the nerd queues, you can actually do split and dual pooling. And
Mhm.
so you can actually change how much of your pool is devoted to one pool or the other. So if you see there, that's just changing the percentage of where it's mining to. It won't enter in new details or anything like that, change your address. It's actually just changing the percentage that is in the API.
Okay, so so no details about your workers, your IP, or anything like that would need to be sent to any sort of centralized server.
Nope. The only thing you could classify that would be Google Analytics that comes with Android applications or iOS applications. Um, especially with the App Store version and the Play Store, excuse me, they kind of go hand in hand and whatnot. And in terms of like outside communications, in the app, you can view the current coin prices and your solo chance probability. So, real quick, I'll explain that. When you create an app, or excuse me, when you create a miner in your inventory, there's a toggle for solo mining, and that doesn't make any changes on your device. What that simply does is in the app, if you've marked it as a solo miner, it's adding that hash rate together that then uses the solochance.com calculator to calculate your odds of, BCH or Bitcoin solo chances. So that's an outside network connection to Solo Chances API. And then the coin prices are through CoinGecko. So those are the outside connections made. And if you unplugged your router from your house, your inlet, so you had no outside communication, HashWatcher would still work. Your miners probably still wouldn't mind, but it's all on a local network. Your coin prices wouldn't work though. So really there's no excessive connection, so to speak.
And with those device overheat warnings, I see that you're able to shut down the miner remotely through the app, right?
So that's not a feature. I like what you're thinking. You can shut down the miner like the Avalon Q. There's a power off functionality. And then with the bit axes, you can only reboot as far as I know.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Generally, if there's a temperature limit that's reached that hits the limit inside the firmware, like the Canon's going to derate automatically
Yep.
or turn off. I've never thankfully had to test that limit. Whereas the BitAxe, I think those will reboot or they'll just stop hashing if you reach that temperature level. That could be an upcoming feature, where if one of your devices has a high temperature, where it will either lower your hash rate or just turn off the device. But with Canon, that will definitely be a possibility. BitAxe, I'm not too sure. I know that with the nerds, they have a soft shutdown where you hold the two buttons and it stops hashing. But I don't know if they've exposed that yet through the API.
Got you. Yeah, it was the reboot that I had seen when I was browsing through here beforehand, not the yeah, okay. Right on. I guess I'm kind of curious if this is something that is going to stay mobile only, or is this something that you might integrate in the future with like a Start 9, or have you thought about those capabilities at all?
The Start 9 is new to me. You'd have to explain that. But to answer the first part, there is a companion Mac application. At this time, it's January. It does only have the brain support because when HashWatcher launched, I launched the Mac app at the same time. And then as the app progressed, I kind of, didn't give as much love to the Mac app like it deserves because that's really what, a lot of people use. And it's really going to fulfill a big ask that the community's been asking for. People ask for the ability to view it off of your network and view your stats at work.
Mhm.
Well, if you have a computer that stays at home, you can have eventually HashWatcher running and then it will communicate with your phone version. Or right now, if you want a solution that will let you do that now, Tailscale is actually one method people use to monitor things off the network. And there's been some pretty good success with that. Hats off to whoever first thought of that. That was new to me. I'd never heard of Tailscale.
I actually just heard of Tailscale a day or two ago for the first time with somebody built some sort of integration with Phoenix Wallet and Tailscale and the ability to do all sorts of interesting things with
Wow.
Lightning Wallet. So I was like, wonder about the details of actually utilizing and running this because it looks beautiful. Again, another great looking application. But yeah, I have not dug too far into that yet, but it did just come into sort of my awareness recently. Again, now someone else is bringing it up, so obviously there's something there to that's worth exploring. In terms of the original question is just being able to run this as an application on your own node. So that's what a Start
Oh,
9 is, or an Umbrel, or
okay,
some
Umbro I've
people
heard of.
build it on a Raspberry Pi. But basically, it's your own local server where you could be able to monitor this remotely. You could do it over Tor if you're running your own node and you want to connect remotely to your own network. You can do so. Just
Mm.
strikes me as something that is worth checking into and exploring because people, with your own node, you have a lot of extra privacy and things like that. So something for you to check into.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. once you mentioned Umbrel, that, flipped the switch. I've heard of Umbrel before, and a couple of people have asked for support on that avenue. So I do like that idea. I have to look into that.
Yeah, definitely suggest speaking with Matt Hill from Start Nine, and I know
Oh,
they're very supportive of helping developers build on top of Start OS, which is their operating system.
yeah, okay.
So something
Mhm.
for you to look into. We're big fans of Matt Hill and Start Nine and everything that they do. They're Bitcoin maximalists, they're privacy focused, sovereignty focused people. So I think there's definitely a possibility for a good home for HashWatcher having a Docker on Start Nine.
Yeah, I think that's a good piece of the puzzle too to kind of integrate it with, an all-in-one application to monitor things. What's cool too with HashWatcher is there's a section in the app where you can buy solo mining hardware. And, we have amazing products like Solo Satoshis in there. Um, and there's some really cool changes coming, with HashWatcher and Solo that I'm pumped for, and a lot of cool visuals and whatnot, and just kind of a big, larger expansion with the two that will really develop into something awesome and provide more features and just a lot of capabilities for HashWatcher users and solo customers.
Yeah, absolutely. We are stoked to work together on stuff like that going forward. And I know that you just had a good call recently with the lads there at Solo, and think it would be great if we just kind of drilled down into that a little bit of what all is coming. You don't have to go into any obscene amounts of detail, but give us a little teaser, a little tickle of the what's
Mhm.
coming in the future.
Well, it's going to make accessibility to Solo Satoshi a lot easier. And I mean that in the way of getting access to things that are, just recently released, being a part of their community in terms of getting not visual feedback, but like content from them with their email subscribers, with their YouTube channel, and even this podcast. So, when you're using HashWatcher, you're going to have a lot of exposure to Solo too, which is going to be sweet because, you know, Solo makes a lot of good products that are really entwined with HashWatcher. And like we talked about before, if somebody buys one BitX or one Avalon and they use HashWatcher, they're going to really be able to see all the different offerings of all this other solo mining hardware you can get, and if you can get that right from the app, that really removes a lot of the barrier for people when they're unsure of what type of device to get, how they work, and how to learn about the software and the hardware itself. I mean, Bitcoin and solo mining adoption only gets easier when people are educated and have a lot of info on, the community and how everything works.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of our biggest focuses at Solo is providing cutting edge education, the most up to date, the most hands on, useful, whether that's guides, blog posts, podcasts, YouTube videos, the whole gamut of educational resources because it is an intimidating world to get into. And it, as you said, very rightly, gets a lot easier once you get going. You get your hands dirty, you start tinkering with things. And, often people go from one BitAxe Gamma to a NerdAxe, from a NerdAxe to maybe a
Yeah.
Q, or, they go to a stealth miner from sat stacking pleb, or they go to a S19 or whatever, or they start hosting somewhere else, in a facility like SAS Mining or Simple Mining or any of these great places because they can't run it at home, but they want to have a home setup and they maybe want to scale into something a little bit more industrial. And it's intimidating to get started, right? Like just setting up your first device if you don't have a technical know-how. So that's why we have guides for everything. And to be able to have an app that's kind of side by side kind of companion to all of that is going to be massive for people that don't really want to use AxOS, or they just want to use it for the initial setup, and then past that
Mhm.
they want to go out and be able to monitor their devices. One thing I found out sort of behind the scenes is that people are opening this app a shit ton of times and checking their stats, their hash rate and stuff, right? Which you would expect. The home mining community, they love their stats, they love to monitor their devices, and they love to, just look. Just
Mhm.
I mean, as Bitcoiners, how many times a day do we check the price chart? I mean, I have a widget on my phone that's got the price. I'm not selling anytime soon, but I'm looking at that price all the time. It's just habit. And so I think with the home miners, it's a habit to want to check your mining stats in your little mining farm at home, right? So I think having all of that integrated where, Solo helps provide the education and then you are providing some in-app resources to go right to the store, check out, access the podcast that you're appearing on now, or access the YouTube channel or the blogs and the guides. Having it all in one place is going to be amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for those visual people that really like the themes, there's going to be a special solo Satoshi theme, and that's one thing I'm really excited for is you know, being able to add that because if you guys were a user around Christmas, you've seen the Christmas theme and the presents that fall. So real quick for some of you new users, when you get the app and if you see these little Bitcoin blocks falling from the top in the title, that represents a share that your device is submitting to the network, sorry, to the pool. And so the more devices you have, the higher hash rate, the more shares you submit, the more blocks that fall down and your device will actually kind of vibrate. So, just from a glance, it's an incredible way to see and feel like how your devices are actually working. I mean, it sounds silly, but like once you start to get like more than 5 devices or even more than one, having a connection to something that's, I don't know, not human in a way, it's interesting, like just to see visually, oh, it's doing work, all these blocks falling. This device I bought is really, it's a lottery ticket. Each share it submits.
Yeah, and I always kind of like fall back to that when people kind of give shade towards the Bidax or the Gamma. It's you're never gonna mine a block with this, which we know is completely false. People have mined blocks with a Gamma, with a Nano, with a Q, with a Nerdax, right? The thing that I really love about these devices is you just touched on it there. They're things that you can put in your hand in the real world, tangible things that connect you to the greatest monetary network of human history, Bitcoin. And I don't really think you can understate the power and the magnitude of something like that, right? Like, this is an educational tool and it's a lottery ticket and it's a DCA tool if you run in a pool. It's, maybe, yeah, it's not got, as many chips as an S21, right? It's a single chip or a quad chip unit. But that thing in your hands that makes Bitcoin kind of tangible and real is beautiful and it's important and it's a gateway drug to, a lot more devices. And then take that to the next level, having something like HashWatcher to visualize it all in real time, I think is brilliant and beautiful because if you look at AXOS, it's like you have all these different IP addresses typed in and they're all brought up. I've got a separate window with 5 or 10 different tabs for each one of my devices. It's really not all that interesting to look at or exciting to look at, and HashWatcher is a lot more engaging in my early experiences with it. I know there's like haptic feedback. There's all sorts of things that kind of draw you into it and make you want to engage with it and keep up with it in real time.
Yeah, and another cool thing too that, keeps you engaged and, engaged with the hardware is there's a leaderboard for best difficulties. So top 50 leaderboard, Canon and BitX devices can enter. Brains are excluded just because the hardware is so much more beefier. Like it kind of would be unfair with the amount of shares they submit. But yeah, there's a leaderboard and it will list your device and, a little username that you pick. And as of a couple days ago, like you guys just touched on X, there's a nano that submitted a share that surpassed Bitcoin's difficulty. Let's get that
Crazy.
exact number. Oh, it's crazy, but it doesn't have a happy ending.
No, it doesn't.
190, 196T. That's crazy. And I think the difficulty at the time was 150 or 146. But the sad part is he was in a foundry pool. It wasn't a solo miner, and you know that's why solo mining is so important because if you don't have all the hash rate to compete or have this large amount of daily revenue from pool mining, solo mining will give you that opportunity. I mean, we've seen recently, 2 blocks that have been hit, I think, within the last year. And as more people adopt solo mining, that number is only going to increase. I mean, it has to.
Yeah, I just want to say to my guy that hit the block in the pool, sorry, man, sucks to suck. That's rough.
I
And
know.
that's from somebody who mines in a pool as well. I mean, I have a bunch of my devices pointed at ocean, and So I sympathize, I empathize with you, but maybe a good painful lesson to run some of those devices, specifically the higher hash rate ones, uh, solo, and have a shot at that block. That 3.125 Bitcoin block reward sure would change your life.
Oh yeah, you could buy a lot more nanos with those.
Definitely, yeah. That's sad. Live and learn. But I think we're in a spot now where we're going to see a lot more solo miners hit a block. Specifically, and this is interesting. The hash rate is kind of dropping off. It's becoming unprofitable in some situations for these big miners to continue running these huge operations, and mm, the hash rate cost is kind of prohibitive to them. And I think that's going to be a bit of a renaissance for the home miner, right? That's going to give people like us that want to run devices at home a renewed sense of hope. It's going to invigorate us. It's going to give us the opportunity as those guys kind of drop hash rate offline. They pivot to AI. They do whatever. That's going to give people running nanos and Qs and BitXs a real opportunity to snag more blocks. Do you find that exciting?
I think that's the most exciting part. When I had first heard of Bitcoin, I think everyone kind of just thinks about warehouses with loud machines, power hungry machines, siphoning away. But I mean, now in 2026, so many people are home mining. So many people are using renewable energy to mine, even solo mine. A good friend of mine, Michael, who actually helped port the iOS version to Android, good high school buddy of mine, he has solar panels and he got his first bidax, a couple weeks ago or maybe about a month or so. And he's using solar. And now he's already crunching the numbers of how many miners can I use to offset my generation? Because, when you sell that to the grid, the wholesale rate they give you it's horrible, maybe one third or one quarter of what you buy it from. So if you can mine or solo mine, I mean, it just makes way more sense. And if you're thinking about solar, there's a couple big pros, people configure, or excuse me, they compute a payoff rate of like 10 or 15 years, but those calculations are done at the current rate that your utility is charging you. Every year they increase the rate, you know, 10, 20%. So that's just lowering your payoff period even faster, you know. And if you're using solar or if you have daytime or excuse me, nighttime utility rates inside a HashWatcher with the Canon devices, you can schedule work mode changes. So when you have cheap electricity at night, you can up your work mode. Or let's say, during the day when you have, excess solar, that would be another time to, increase that hash rate. And then conversely, when things are expensive, turn them down.
So you're saying with, let's say we're talking about the queue, you can, if you have an overnight power rate that's different than your peak hours or daily power rate, you can actually schedule in the app the eco mode to turn on at peak hours and then ramp it up to high between, the with the better rate hours.
Yep, that is correct. And one thing I give my hat off to is Android in this feature because, with Android, it really lets, excuse me, the Android ecosystem will really let apps live in the background longer. Um, and what I mean by that is, when you set a schedule, you don't even have to be using your phone for the schedule to fire through Android. Whereas iPhone, Apple kind of chooses when to wake the app up and do background tasks. And that depends on your battery life, how often you use the phone, the system resources available. So the features there for both devices, both kinds of devices, but I mean, really, Android's nailed it with their background services.
All right. Good to know. Unfortunately, just bought a brand new iPhone 17 the other day, so I guess I'm out of luck there. But
Oh, I'm a iPhone user myself. I bought my first Android phone to make a HashWatcher for Android, so I really like
okay,
both. Team iPhone though. I mean, I'm a Mac user, so
yeah,
it just goes hand in hand.
yeah. But I think you're right with like the customization of, and I'm no developer, but just from studying things like Graphene OS that people utilize on the Pixel, the Google Pixel phones,
Mm.
for a complete like basically cutting off the spyware of Google or Android operating systems and just basically being able to have a sort of like a privacy phone. That's
Yeah.
huge. Whereas you cannot get that with Apple. So I mean, I'm with you. Definitely a fan of Mac and Apple devices for all the kind of cross functionality and all the integration that they have. But then you see the benefit to people
Mhm.
that want more customization and privacy and app development kind of things. The Android and Pixel even seem to be the place to go, the place to build.
Exactly. I mean, and Android makes up a really large market segment too for mobile applications. So, in the beginning, to be honest, I didn't even have an idea of if I was going to port this to Android. But I think quickly, people were begging for it so much. And, at the end of the day, it wasn't fair to them to see all this media with HashWatcher and for them to get left out. Cause I feel like some of the larger apps, they sometimes leave out Android users. So I didn't want that to happen this time. I mean, I had to show them some love. So we brought it to Android and the downloads, it released on Android around the 23rd and it's almost surpassed iOS downloads. And the iOS version dropped in about, I think, the end of October. So yeah, I mean, just the user base alone, you have to support Android.
Yeah, it's really, really nice that you have it on both. I really hate when I see an app and I'm like, oh yes, can't wait to try this out. And then you go and it's only available on Android or only available on iPhone or whatever, the device that you don't have.
Yep.
So it's definitely nice that right out of the gate, you've kind of thought of, how to get it on both and kind of develop them what seems like side by side. So I think that's amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm happy it's finally on both because, at the end of the day, it makes a larger group of people happy and it helps solo mining adoption.
Absolutely. Well, let's just take a quick pause in the conversation to give away some sats. Going to give away some Bitcoin. So
Mm.
go ahead and get your Lightning wallets ready, guys. And I'm going to give away some sats here from our sponsor of the show, Bitcoin Well, which is the best place in the US or Canada to stack sats in a fully non custodial way on chain or Lightning. You can buy and send it right to your wallet, your cold storage, wherever you want. They don't custody your funds ever. And when you sign up using our link, which is in the description, you can earn bonus spins to get yourself more free sats, and you can earn points, which you can use to buy your very own BitX Gamma from Solo Satoshi right on the Bitcoin Well website. So we're going to go ahead and share the screen here. And then we're going to go to the Bitcoin wishing well, toss a coin in here. And the first person to scan this QR code with their Lightning wallet is going to win a fat prize of 575 sats. There's the QR code. Go ahead and scan that. Good luck. If you were the lucky winner, let me know in the comments down below. And if you weren't the lucky winner, be sure to sign up using our QR code, which I'll pop up on the screen here momentarily after this one. And you'll get some bonus points and bonus spins at the free sets. All right, back to the episode. So I want to jump into the more kind of technical features of the app. What do you find? Let's start with BitX and NerdX and that whole line. What are the features that you've developed in this app that you think are sort of the most fundamental, the most interesting, the thing that really is functional and valuable to the people using it?
I would definitely have to say the aggregated totals at the top. What's cool is when you're in the app, it adds some parameters, excuse me, not parameters, but hash rate, average temperatures, average efficiency, power usage. It adds all those up and it makes them scroll across the bar like this. So depending on how big your fleet is, you can view everything from the top. So that's the majority of what makes it really useful. Secondly, I would have to say is, things like temperature alerts and block found notifications because um for HashWatcher, I didn't even think to check the solo pool, every day or so I would. And that was actually with, an S19. So the notifications that it provides and the aggregated totals, I think, make it really pristine.
Awesome. And if I was running an S19, like a stealth miner from Sat Stacking Pleb, and as long as it's running brains, I can pop that baby onto HashWatcher as well.
Yep, that is correct.
Amazing. Is there anything that this app is going to show us in terms of like pool and not just solo mining, but let's say you're pooled mining. Is there any like dashboard stats there?
So it doesn't integrate with any pools yet, but it's going to tell you your latency to the pool, your shares submitted to the pool, your best difficulty. So it really functions similar, whether you're pool mining or solo mining. And from the app too, you'll actually have the total hash rate of all your devices to the pool if you're solo mining. And if you have some solo mining, that hash rate would be reflected, in your solo chance calculator.
Beautiful. Love it. And what about for the Canon devices? I know you mentioned earlier the fan speed control. Is there any other features that you really want to highlight?
So when we were talking about visual and haptic feedback, one of the features with the Nano is each time a share is submitted, the light will flash Bitcoin orange. And that's another way that to visually see, the device is doing work, a share is being submitted to the pool. And you can turn that off in settings. I know some people like to choose their own settings, but the capability of the Nano's LED bar is pretty big with HashWatcher. It's used in several ways, and I don't really want to spoil them all, but it's pretty neat in how we're able to change the colors and basically incorporate the color to how the hardware is doing, what work mode it's in, and things like that. And the work mode scheduling I think is really unique too because those devices pull a lot of energy. You know, some of them are actual devoted heaters, so you can change your heat mode based on the time of day. We talked about electricity. So the scheduling function, I think, is pretty unique to Kanan because, relatively speaking, the Bidax and the nerds don't draw too much energy. But I mean, the Nano is pretty high in wattage it pulls. So, and it only goes up from there with the Q.
Yep.
You can do your filter life and things like that. And kind of use them as a thermometer, like I mentioned, you have your inlet and outlet temperatures. So like my Q, I can see its outlet temperature and exhaust temperature. So that's kind of telling me how the garage is being heated. Right now, we have 140 degrees leaving the exhaust and inlet of about 73. And if we tap that card, we see chip temperatures for each device. So lots of information there, really specific to each device. More data is better.
So those are things that are being monitored by the device, but the Canon firmware wasn't really letting you have access to it through the family app, but you've unlocked that with HashWatcher.
Right. And that's why I'm kind of thinking that they're kind of playing the hands off approach, where they just want to leave everything else in the hands of the developer. So, that's why they haven't built on it. They make it there, but they leave everything else to be used as the developer sees fit or the end user as they see fit. Bless them for making such a really good hard piece of hardware and all of the sensors, all the temperature sensors. I think that was really a pretty groundbreaking thing too for home mining when you can buy these devices, you can buy this heater that sits on your floor and it mines Bitcoin. So hats off to them. I really love what they've made in terms of hardware. And, we really got to thank them too for having such an open source hardware too, they've really done a lot with their firmware development. And like we talked about earlier, they really open sourced it now. I think we might see XOS on the Nano pretty soon. So that's even better.
Yes, Mr. Scott 9000, we are waiting with bated breath to see what you're able to
Please
do with it. Please, sir, fix it for
give
us.
us.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're all looking forward to seeing what Scott, the creator of Bidax, is able to do with the firmware for Canaan and in terms of it being open sourced and available to developers now. So let's see in the near future, hopefully soon, what's able to come from that because I think we've seen it with Bidax and Nerdax. Once that once that's available to the community at large, people get busy and they get busy breaking things,
hmm
fixing things, expanding them, making them better. It's just going to be a wave of innovation that kind of floods out after the first sort of like hurdle is overcome, and then people are like, oh man, there's so much possible with this. They start connecting with each other, and all of a sudden, we have something much better than what Canaan gave us out of the box. So I'm really excited as well. I know you are, to see what comes out of all of that.
Oh yeah, I think once people start digging into the firmware and the hardware more, it's going to attract more attention in terms of people being interested in the product. Because when you say that O word with a piece of hardware, that really interests people. When you tell them this can now be overclocked, I mean, you just really attracted a lot of people that like tinkering with things and squeezing every bit out of anything they can.
Absolutely. We definitely know from firsthand experience, people love to overclock. That is everybody's favorite thing in this community. So we'll see what happens with the Canaan devices and the firmware, if that's something that's possible once the development gets going in the open source aspect. So tell me, man, as much as you want to tell us, is there anything new feature wise that you're really excited to build, or any ideas that you have? I know people love to, especially in development, kind of keep that close to their chest, but anything that you're really excited about in terms of next features or updates?
Well, I know that Christmas is over, but I've still got a couple things in mind and some presents for you guys. What I will say, which is kind of low key, to make HashWatcher more usable for everybody else and their lifestyle or what they mine, the coin prices, we're going to have more coin price options, different solo chances for different coins, as well as different time frames. Right now it just tells you per month, but that will be expanded. And those S9s that are currently unsupported that a lot of you have been asking for, those will be supported. And then some other things that I can't say just yet, but I think really soon you guys will know, just like the rest of the community.
Beautiful. I think the S9 will be a huge unlock. People are very glued to that device as sort of like one of the OG heat punk devices that they don't want to ever let go of. They don't want to get rid of them. It's a lot of people's like first learning device. Once they step up
Hmm.
from a BitAxe, they grab a old S9. They learn to repair. They learn to run a bigger miner in their home setup. And I think that'll be really useful for people.
Right. And a lot of people, I think the enclosures, the custom enclosures, they seem to be built on those too, like the 120 version, 120-volt versions. So a lot of people have started with S9s and a lot of them probably still have the hardware laying around. And, once you can integrate it with HashWatcher and add it to the fleet, I think they'll come out of the closet or, come out of storage.
Fantastic. Tell us a bit about what part of the app is free, and then there's a premium tier behind a paywall. Just kind of give people the lowdown on how that all looks.
So with BitAxe and Kanan devices, you can have up to two devices before you hit the paywall. And with Brains, that's one device. And the reason being is a couple of reasons. Axe OS comes out with really frequent updates, and sometimes those updates will break HashWatcher. And so it really continues the development for all these other platforms and all the existing ones. And there's some server side costs in terms of the fetching of the coin prices, notifications that happen in the background. You need an external server for those to ping the Apple server. So really, that's the only reason. Temperature alerts also, those things come in the background. Would have loved to have had the app for free, and initially it was, but I mean, we're almost at 6,000 downloads, and those are a lot of refreshes on CoinGecko and, Solo. So that's how
Yeah.
the layout is sourced for those.
Well, we know firsthand that the constant firmware upgrades or updates definitely cause problems, throw wrenches into things. So I can only imagine, as sort of a secondary app that's integrating all of that, you definitely are going to have a lot of fixing to do and a lot of random problems that is going to require a lot of development work and time and energy and resources. So I think, well worth buying the premium version to support continued development of such a brilliant tool. How much is the premium version for people, or the different tiers? I know there's a couple options.
So by far, unsurprisingly, the most popular one is the lifetime subscription. People generally just want to buy things and be done with it, and that's $40, and it drops down to yearly at $20. Or a lot of people also will start with just monthly. At $3, and that will just let people dip their feet in, see if they like it. And then sometimes they'll convert to yearly or just lifetime. And, the pricing levels took a lot of thought. And I think it's worked out really well because, I mean, almost 6,000 downloads. Um, I've only had two people say it was too expensive. And if you ask any other business owner, you actually want a lot of price complaints because then they think you should raise it. But I think two complaints over 5,000 users or 5,000 downloads is very good. And I think it's fair. And a lot of people have said the same thing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm collecting money from it, but I get a lot of emails saying like they're happy to buy lifetime, and it's just amazing seeing the response and the positivity. Like, I mean, just go look at the app stores and check the reviews. I think they'll convince you it's a worthwhile investment,
Right,
for obvious reasons.
I think those two people were drunk or short a few brain cells or something, because $40. You said it was $40 for the lifetime, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's nothing. You go out to eat once at a restaurant, and you're paying $40 for a salad and a Coke or a beer or something, So, $40 really, and I'm not being paid to show this. I just think as people in the home mining space, this is what we love. This is what we thrive off of: is people taking these open source tools and building their own things on top of it. So, it's kind of incumbent upon us to push this, as long as the people behind that development work and the product are solid people, which Gabe is. He's a great guy. He's building something for the community. He's doing things right by the community. I think $40 for a lifetime of access it's a steal. So, definitely go check it out. Check out the free version. Run up to 2 BitAxes or NerdAxe devices, right? Get a feel for it, and then try the monthly or upgrade to the premium. I really don't see how you can go wrong for $40. I mean, you can't go wrong. That's an awesome deal.
I agree. And one of those price complaints too, there was a couple of people that jumped in and like, kind of attacked this person for complaining. He said, and he made a great point, like, I'm not sitting on the couch with my free time drinking beer or just sitting on the couch. I'm doing something that takes time, and it takes a lot of time, and it's able to produce a valuable tool that people can enjoy. Like, people spend their free time in many ways, and this is how I spend my free time. And I think it's been a pretty good benefit to, 5,000 plus people.
Absolutely. You've had a tremendous amount of growth in a very short period of time. And, the more resources you have, as long as you continue to funnel those resources into the development work, I think we're going to have a tool that is increasingly valuable and useful to the everyday home miner as time goes on. I mean, there's really not a limit on how amazing the functionality and usefulness of this will be. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm really excited. We need more of this. Every time I see this, I'm excited because this is really the spirit of innovation from the everyday user of a BitAxe or a NerdAxe, a home miner. This is what it's all about. If it wasn't for that initial spark from Scott, the instigator of the BitAxe movement, we wouldn't have all of these great things. We wouldn't have a public pool necessarily. We wouldn't have a solo CK pool. People wouldn't be
Mm.
building on nodes and on StartOS and in all the ways that they are. We wouldn't have HashWatcher. Who knows? There's just so many things that wouldn't exist. And ultimately, we need way more of this if we're going to dismantle the proprietary mining empire that exists out there. So, kudos to you, hats off to you. Appreciate the great work on this app. I'm excited to dig into the premium features and add all of my devices. Once I set up this Nano 3S and do that whole unboxing video and guide, I'll be plugging that into the app as well, and just really excited as I get more and more. I know I'm going to get the Q soon. That'll go on there, and just really excited to tinker around with it.
That's awesome. And another point too, the funding that's generated with this app, it also funds the future development. A great case in point. Buddy of mine, he was compensated to bring this to Android. Not many people in their life just have enough spare time to do things out of the goodness of their heart. The proceeds from the iOS version directly went to the development of Android, and in the beginning also, all these new devices that are supported, they have to be purchased to test. So that's how a lot of this is coming into play too. You start small and then you reinvest, buy new equipment. Ryan Karpaz, just a quick shout out to him. He was also one of the day ones that really helped out with testing. He had the first Q and he had the first HashWatcher app compatible with the Q. You know, he was a big help too. But generally, development comes from within, and there's costs associated. And a lot of time. And I thank those people that have helped get HashWatcher to where it is now.
I really hate and I really don't think that the home mining community has this attitude in general, but I'm sure it exists within the community. That I really don't like the idea that people shouldn't be compensated for their amazing work, right? This is your idea, this is your time, your energy, your resources, you're giving up your all of those things to develop this that could be spent elsewhere. And so just in general, if people are doing great work, open source work, why should they not be funded? If it's something you find valuable, fund it. If you find the podcast valuable and you listen on Fountain, zap us some sats, right? Use the link to buy your BitAxe, support the podcast, right? And likewise, if you find the development work of something like HashWatcher useful, or the work that the OSMU does, donate a few bucks, right? Donate your coffee money, fund that, because otherwise, guess who we're beholden to? Closed source crap, right? So yeah, man, I don't let anybody make you feel bad that you need money to do this work, because we all need money to do great things in the world. And just because we're in Bitcoin and Bitcoin home mining, it doesn't mean that there's not a spot for that as well. So good on you, and I'm glad, and I hope people keep contributing so that you can accelerate development, not just keep it going, but the more that you're funded, the more you can accelerate the great work that you do, bring other developers on. We know how hard dev work is, so the more the better. The more big brained devs that can help push new features, the better.
Yeah, the iOS changelog in the App Store is pretty rich with lots of features that are always coming. So if you're curious about the development and the pace of it, and like, do you get new features and new value? Just read the what's new and scroll down and look at the timestamps. I mean, a lot has been brought to HashWatcher in a really short amount of time.
That's awesome. Give people a rundown of where they can find you, how they can get the app, what your social medias are, and yeah, just plug your stuff.
So if you're on X, you can find me. My handle is SunPower Fusion, and that's a play on solar energy.
Love it.
You can find me on Facebook in the solo mining groups. Just search me, Gabe Pena. And then the apps themselves are in the Play Store as well as the Apple App Store. Just search HashWatcher and it will pop up there.
Brilliant. And do you take Bitcoin donations at all yet? Do you have an address for that we can maybe share, or that's something maybe in the future?
I think by the time that the video's published, we could make that happen. Probably in the app too in the future, buy me a coffee. That'd be sweet. Anything helps.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely. Okay, great. And are you on Noster?
no, I'm not.
Okay. Well, we'll have to give him the Noster pill and see if we can get him on there, because Noster is. Do you know about Noster at all? You're just not there?
Nope, brand new to it.
Okay, so it's basically like Twitter for Bitcoiners without all the extra fluff and garbage. It's pretty much, if you're on there, it's a lot higher signal and a lot less noise. Obviously, the audience is going to be a little bit more limited and kind of like an echo chamber, in the sense that pretty much going to be connecting with Bitcoiners. But if you're developing a Bitcoin app and you're talking about mining and Bitcoin and things like that, that's a pretty good captive audience to have. So I'll have to get you to check out Noster, and I think the people there would find a lot of value out of HashWatcher. I know a lot of people into mining on Noster, so little tip for you. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, dude, for your time and for sharing all of this with us. As you continue to develop this app, we'll have you back on in the future if you'd like to break down all the new changes and features and development that goes on with HashWatcher. And yeah, be sure to click Gabe's links in the description. Go sign up for Bitcoin Well, share this video, drop a thumbs up, drop us a comment, show us some love, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Gabe.
See you guys.
Hello, everybody who stuck around till the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I loved having Gabe on for his very first podcast appearance. And man, Gabe is super generous. So on behalf of the Home Mining Podcast and HashWatcher, we are blessed to be able to give away 2 lifetime premium subscriptions to HashWatcher so you can have your app looking like this with more than 2 devices running on it. We've got one for an iOS user and one for an Android user to give away. Hook up all your bitaxes, link in the description to grab this from Solo Satoshi. Link your bitaxes, your Canan devices, your Brains devices. The list goes on. This is just an incredible app. And so we're really thankful to Gabe for giving us 2 lifetime premium memberships to give away. All you have to do if you want to be entered to win is drop a comment down below about what your favorite part of this episode was. What did you learn? What are you going to pass on to somebody else? What did you really value about this episode? Just drop that down below in the comments. Make sure you're liking us, following us, like that video, and share it with a friend. Blast this all over X, Noster, you know the deal, guys. We appreciate the help very much, and all your support has been tremendous over the last year of this podcast. So we're thankful to Gabe for allowing us to give back. Drop those comments, and we'll pick a winner shortly and announce it on X and maybe in the next episode.